All right. You know what it is? You know who it is. We're back. Brandon Gallagher here. Episode 3, the BGPERFORM podcast. Today, we're going to break down when I lost weight and how I really got into this whole coaching thing. Because I think it's an interesting topic. And, I've brought it up a couple times in the past. But there's a lot of mistakes I made early on, and I wish I changed it. And I wish, let me rephrase. I don't wish I changed it. I wish I talked about it more, right? Because it was such a struggle for me, and it was such a big change for me that I kind of was really ashamed of myself at certain points, which we'll get to. But I was afraid to talk about it because I let myself get to a point like that. And when I let myself get to a point like that, I wasn't ever happy, And the reason I say this is because, I talk to people and I see people every single day who struggle with weight loss and struggle in this topic, and in this aspect of what I do as a coach now, that this weight loss and this initial change, one, it shaped me mentally, and two, it brought me into the world that I'm in today, right? So starting kind of looking back, and I do have another episode about this early on. I think it's good for me now to kind of talk about this in a different light when I'm a little bit more mature and have gone through a few more things in my life. So, the change was literally almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago in August, I remember kind of just not feeling good about myself, not feeling happy, not feeling proud of the position that I put myself in physically. And I had just graduated high school, and I remember all my friends were going to these big fancy schools, and I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do, I didn't know where I wanted to take this thing. I didn't know how I wanted to, approach the rest of my life. So I stayed home, and a lot of that was because I was scared. A lot of that was because I was afraid to leave, and I was afraid to put myself in uncomfortable positions, aka which led me to being in the position physically I was in for a very long time. And I remember it. I always remember it because I was sitting in my friend's basement when I really made the mental change that I was like, yo, I'm doing this, and it was the first time that I ever fully committed to something like that in my life. And it was tough, and I had doubts every single day when I went through the process. And, eventually it got to a point where I knew if I didn't do it at that point, I wasn't going to do it, And you're going to hear me say that a lot because that's been a huge driving factor in a lot of the things that have brought me to where I am today. That if I didn't do it and make that decision in that point, if I gave myself a chance to think outside of just making that decision, I wouldn't have done it, So kind of bringing it back, right? August 2013, I believe it was August 13th. I don't know if that's the exact date, but I have a blog I'll have to check just to kind of go back to it. But I remember making that morning, just waking up. And I remember when I made the commitment, the only time I could work out was at 5 a.m. And if you know me now, you know that I wake up early. That's when it started. That's when I started going through that whole waking up early process and working out consistently. And it was a bitch, right? I was waking up at 5 a.m., working out till 6, rushing home, going to the school that I was going to at the time, which was Hudson Valley Community College in upstate New York. I'm from upstate New York, if you guys didn't know that. A lot of the people that are listening to this probably do, but Albany, shout out to the 518. But anyways, I was going to Hudson Valley Community College for business, and I almost dropped out of school twice. Once was because I thought I wanted to be a part of my family bakery, and that was mostly because I did not have any other clue as to what I wanted to do. And the second time was because I just didn't think I was capable and I didn't know where I wanted to go with it, right? And in that process of when I first started was during the weight loss. And I remember the first couple first couple days of how excited I was and how drained I was, right? It was like a mix of the two energies. I was so excited to take this step for myself, but I was drained because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to sustain it, and because I had done it in the past, and I tried so many times in the past to make this change and do what I needed to do. But, and I hope this story can hit home for a couple of you that are listening, because it's not as simple as just trying, right? And a lot of people fail, and a lot of people do this time and time again, or they find success, which is something we're going to talk about. Like, because one of the things that for myself that I was truly happy about in the weight loss was that I've been able to keep it off, right? Because too many times I've seen people lose weight and just get it back on, right? So when I jumped into this, I made a couple promises to myself, right? I made a promise that for 3 months I was going to fully embrace myself in this and do everything that I needed to do to lose this weight. And I also made the commitment to myself that if I was going to do this, that I wasn't going to tell anybody. And I was just going to put my head down for 3 to 6 months and just make changes, not post about it, not say anything about it, because like I said, I was ashamed. I wasn't happy at the position I was in, and I wasn't able to kind of separate myself at that point, because I was 18 and going through a lot of other things at that time that I was trying to balance, and this wasn't helping, right? So I made a commitment to myself to just put my head down for 6 months and just see what I could do, not tell anybody, and just see what comes out on the other end. And like I said, I remember it was 5 a.m. I was ready to just get to work. I woke up, and and kind of a little bit more background, right? Like, I come from an Italian family, and I love my family, but a lot of times with that, when you're bored, you eat. When you're sad, you eat. When you're happy, you eat. When there's a party, you eat. And it was just something that was always kind of pushed on me, and I didn't know how to say no. And a lot of that stuff was me obviously not understanding and eating feelings, right, and putting myself in bad positions, and just not understanding. I didn't have that type of family. Like, luckily my mom was somebody who was heavily into fitness and was always like pushing it, right? My mom was never like pushing it onto me to the point that she was like shoving it down my throat, but she was always taking care of herself. She was the only one in my family who took care of herself. She was the only one in my family who would like work out every single day, and I remember we used to joke about it, and because she would always watch what she eats, but like, she was a huge influence, and like, seeing that every day, I wanted to do that, but I didn't think well of myself at the time enough to take that step and put myself in that position and be afraid, or be able to fail and not be afraid, right? So when my whole life I'd been an active kid. I was playing basketball my whole life, and I remember the one of the big things, now that I'm bringing this up, that kind of sparked the weight loss was my senior year. I remember one of the hardest moments to that point in my life was varsity basketball. I was told that basically I wasn't going to play. I only made the team because I made the team the year before, and I was just going to be a bench warmer. And I remember, I got told that, and I remember I just went into the hallway behind the gym and just cried for probably 20 or 30 minutes before anyone picked me up. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of like let it out and, went through the process of understanding it, probably not healthily, right, as I know now. But yeah, it was something, because that was the first time in my life that my weight or my lack of caring for myself led to me not being able to do something that I loved and do it to a high level. And when I heard those words and went through that, I didn't know what to do, and like, obviously it's a learning process now that I look back on, but at that time I couldn't understand. I was like, what, like, why are they saying this? Like, what are they doing? Like, this is their fault, right? And just not being able to truly understand that this was on me, and like I said, it was something that really hit home, and I struggled with, but that was one of those points where I said, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to finish this because, some of my best friends were on that team, and I had such a great season. And, it was such a good experience being in that position, right? Because it made me unselfish. It made me, it put myself in a position where I had to just enjoy, right? And it wasn't always fun. I always wanted to be out there and show my skills and do what I wanted to do. But, I didn't take care of myself, and that was a repercussion of that. And, going back to that, I never did anything to change that. I knew going into that tryout that I wasn't prepared physically, and I had probably one of the worst tryouts I've ever had. And, I knew at that point, that it wasn't going to go as planned. So I just did what I did, and I figured, because it always worked that way, right? I never really did off-season work. I never took care of myself. I never watched what I eat, but I still made the team, because my skills put me in that position to play, and that was it, right? And, as a result of my laziness, I was rewarded with a lot of time on the bench, right? And I never took responsibility for my shortcomings. I blamed everybody else. And finally, at that point, it hit me, right? And it was like, what are you doing, right? You need to change. And that was a hard couple weeks, right? Hard couple months, really, going through that process, because I still didn't make a change, and it had to sink in, and it went through that process, and it finally kind of just hit me, after I graduated and all my friends were leaving and I was just there by myself. I knew that I had to make a change, and the poor eating habits, the bad sleeping habit, all of it needed to change. And, through that summer, thankfully, I had some friends who were pretty consistent with working out. Shout out to Sam and Nick being one of the people that I looked up to a ton in that, because, he was someone who was very fit and always kept up with his health, and he pushed me a lot, whether he knows that or not. He helped a lot in me, making this change. And, when I started to get into the habit of just working out, that's when, I knew I had some glimmer of hope that I could do it, right? I wasn't doing anything else. I was just lifting. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating right? And my confidence was low, right? And again, I never thought I'd be able to do it. And I was scared shitless to even start, because I didn't want to fail, And I know that a lot of the people listening to this now have had that same thing, right? And it might not be weight loss, right? It might be whatever thing you're going through, but it's hard, when you're going through that. You're trying to tell yourself maybe I can start next week, or I gotta have this before I get there. And that's what I was telling myself, but this time I really decided it was going to be different. And with the help, like I said, I didn't ask for help because I wanted to do it by myself. And I think there was a reason for it, right? I think that I was meant to be there, and I was meant to do this as a coach, and I was meant to be in the position that I am in now, and I needed to do it by myself, right? And I didn't need to ask for help. So so when I got back to that, I made that change, and I actually have the date written down here. August 25th. It was a Monday morning. It was my first day at college, and my alarm went off for 5 a.m. I got up and I was ready to go. I went to Bally's Total Fitness, which was in Crossgates Mall at the time, which was crazy because the gym was a mess. But I got the job done, right? And like I said, when I went through that process, there was just so much that I needed to change. And at that point, I think my lack of knowledge helped me. And I really think my lack of knowledge just put me in a position where I was able to just put my head down and go. And because I didn't know what was on the other end, and I had no idea on what to do, I just did, right? And when I did, I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about the outcome on the other side. I just took each day at a time, which, thinking back, I don't even do that now sometimes, and I remember, it's crazy because when I look back at that now, I've always asked myself, how the hell did I do that, right? Because I made such a huge change, and which we'll get to in a second, and had so much progress in such a short time that I was amazed at myself that I was even able to kind of to get where I needed to get and do it in the way that I did it, right? So yeah, so it's not, again, it's not as simple as just telling yourself you're going to make a change. You obviously have to go through that process and make the change, and that's what I did. And for people that may not know me, right, I'm not a freak athlete. I don't think I'm an average Joe, right? I'm not freakishly tall. I'm not fast. I'm not super strong. I don't have an amazing physique, right? But I think that my ability to adapt and my ability to kind of break this stuff down into simple terms is what's always helped me get through this, and what's created the opportunities that I've had as a coach throughout the last couple of years, right? And through that process, right, not every day was perfect, and there was more days that were bad probably than were good, but those good days were like very good days, and there were times where like I thought it wasn't working, right, when I was looking at the wrong things or looking at the wrong metrics, or I just worked my ass off for 2 weeks to gain a pound, right? Not understanding that like that's part of this process. And also I did terrible at tracking. I just used the scale and I barely took pictures, which is another thing that I'm going to talk about in a second. But yeah, so in the first couple months it was slow. I was making food changes. I was making, mindset changes, and I was building the habit. And this is where this whole process of what I do today started, right? And like it all stems from this. And it's crazy because like when I started doing that, then I had obviously you have no clue where that stuff's going to take you, right? But it started from that, and it's built up to what you guys see today. And I still use the same process. I still use the same process with every individual, everybody I talk to. I always tell them it's going to be a 3-month thing. And that's exactly what it was for me, right? The first month was me just making small changes, introducing new ideas to myself, introducing new ways of thinking, getting myself in the gym, understanding the weights, understanding how to feel, understanding how to move, right? And the second month was where I was able to really kind of like test myself and dip my toes in the water, right? And if you've worked with me in the past, you've heard me have this conversation with you, right? That first month is just understanding what you're doing, and it's going to be slow. It's going to seem like you're not making much progress, but this is what's going to set us up, and you're going to hear what helped me kind of do this, right? So the way I did that, I wanted to just lose 10 pounds. That was all I wanted to do. I was 260 at the time, and I just wanted to lose 10 pounds. And I gave myself 2 months to reach that goal. And I fucking hammered that goal, right? I did everything I needed to, and I probably went overboard. But by the end of the 2 months, I was down almost 30 pounds. I think it was like 25, 30 pounds I was almost down. And when I got there, it was over, right? I felt the changes. I knew what I was doing, and I knew how to make it work, and I just fucking hammered it every single day, right? And so like I remember I started in August, and I believe it was February of 2014, that next year was when I hit my new goal that transpired through the months, right, of 200 pounds. And I remember the first time I looked down on the scale and I was under 200 pounds. I had just finished playing basketball for a couple hours, and I got home, I weighed myself, and I was like 196. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? I was just like, I kind of didn't know how to react. And I didn't celebrate it, I just kind of like looked at it and I was like, wow, that's awesome. And then I just went on with the rest of my day. And it's things like that I regret, right? It's things like that where I didn't enjoy this process. I didn't understand what I was doing, right? And I didn't track it the way I wanted to. I didn't take enough pictures. I didn't record myself, right? And maybe that was for a reason, right? Because I think that this was something that I had to do for myself and not for anybody else. But also that, I think this was for me to learn. And I think it was just for this very reason, it was to be this beacon, be this person that can help people who want to get into this, right? And do this in a good way. And just a side note, I don't want to make everything so inspirational and sad or whatever, but this is just part of the story, right? And we're gonna get into the good stuff eventually, but like this is part of what the BGPERFORM brand is, and I want you guys to understand this and know, because this made me who I am, right? So yeah, so by the end of February 2014, I had lost 60 pounds in 6 months, and I had gotten down to under 200 pounds. And I have posted that before and after picture in the past. If you guys do want to see it, just let me know. But yeah, it was nuts. It was the first time I looked at myself and I was like, who the hell is that, right? Before the beard, before the bald head, I looked like a child, right? And part of me always thought like, damn, like I almost didn't do it, right? And there was a lot of times during that 6 months where I like almost gave up, or I would try to compromise with myself, right? And like I think that the best feeling was knowing that like all the stuff I just did paid off and actually worked when I put my mind to it, right? And like I said, that was one of the first times in my life that I had done it. And I remember the looks that I got from people, and I remember they were like, yo, what did you do? Like, oh my God. And it was awesome, right? And it made me feel good because finally that like I was happy with myself at that point, right? And during that time, I think I gained so much more information than just like the losing weight part, right? Like I gained knowledge about myself, I gained confidence, that I never had in my life, and I gained an opportunity to like really put myself in a position to understand this stuff so I could help people. And really from that point on, that domino affected or whatever is the catalyst, right? It was the catalyst behind what drove me to change everything. At that point I had met some people that were running a gym, and I ended up going to this gym called Black Sheep or CrossFit Contrarian, where Dean Lieber used to own it. And when I got there, that's when I really knew that I could be a coach. And that's when I really started this process of being a coach. And this is going to be more information for another episode. But, this whole weight loss process was something that obviously I needed to go through, right? And I think that when I look back at all this, and I look back at, my childhood, and I look back at all that stuff that I went through, like it was for this. It was to be able to have this conversation with people and understand. And I think a lot of trainers struggle because they haven't struggled like that in the past, right? They haven't gone through that weight loss. They haven't looked at the scale and seen nothing change. They haven't had that conversation with themselves where they're like, yo, I'm about to give up. Like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want Oreos. I just want to eat, right? And this is what kind of, and as I'm talking about this, like I said, it's all kind of like coming back to me and filtering through my head. But, this was the point when I knew I wanted to be a coach. This was the point when I knew I wanted to help other people. This was the point when, I made that change at my community college to switch so I could get my bachelor's degree in human biology. And this was one of the things that helped me, create the BGPERFORM method, right? If you listen to the last episode, this is one of those things that goes into the BGPERFORM method. This is the process that I take. This is what I was taught, and I taught through just learning, right? And when I tell you there's so much learning during that 6 months, right? I did so much stuff. I had tried new diets. I tried new ways of working out. I was, trying everything that I could to make this work. And it helped me open up my eyes into a lot of the bullshit that was out there. And it helped me open my eyes into a lot of the good stuff that goes into fitness and training and what it is today, right? So the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from this is that, this process is long, this process is hard, but it can definitely be accomplished, right? And finding yourself someone who's gone through it and talking, and I'm always here to talk about that process if you are struggling, because there is a lot of struggles that go into the weight loss process, right? And even the weight gain process. I have people that are very close to, like my cousin, who has always had trouble gaining weight, right? And it goes hand in hand. It's not just losing weight is hard. People have those problems in the opposite direction. And again, I make this podcast to let you guys know that, like, this is in hopes that to show you it can be done, right? And like, I want someone to understand that, like, that people that may know me now that didn't know me back then, like, I wasn't always this, right? And I'm still getting better. I'm still in that process of losing weight, right? And to just reminded me, because I want to go back to this, is like losing weight is just the first step, right? Keeping it off and changing habits and not going back to those bad ways is the real struggle, right? That's the thing that you need to worry about and attack and feel the most. And if you don't do that, in the right way, you're going to struggle, You're not going to have success, because too many people make these unsustainable changes, and this was part of something that I did, right? And I learned from this, right? And like, I think that some of the changes I made early on were crazy, right? And I paid for it, because when I got down to 200 pounds, in over the course of like 6 months, I kind of ballooned back up to about 220, because I had broke my foot, I believe, my first summer of college in May. Yeah, that's when I broke my foot, and I was on the couch for 3 months, and I couldn't do anything. And I had gained some of that weight back, and I kind of struggled again. I was like, fuck, like, what is going on? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, I kind of let everything get to my head, and that was the first time I'd broken a bone, right? Such small problems now when I look back, that I was so devastated by it. But when I look at that, right, like, that is hard when you see the scale go back up after you just work so hard to get down to a dream weight, and it goes back up 20 pounds, right? And then you lose it, and then you bring it back up and you lose it, and then COVID happened, and like, there's all these different things that go through. Like, when COVID did happen, I did gain a lot of weight, right? Because we were all inside just sitting there going through the process. And there's been up and downs through this, but consistently I've always been able to understand when it's time, right? And I've had these habits, and I follow these things, and they all started then. They all started when I put myself first and was like, hey, I'm doing this for me, right? I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to do this in the ways that I want to do it, and I'm going to do this for me, right? And nobody else. And that's where this all started. That's where the BGPERFORM method started. That's where, the success that you see today, the small slivers of success that I'm starting to, have in this coaching world, they all started from this, right? And they all started from me trusting myself and putting myself in a position where I had to fail, and I had to try, and obviously I succeeded, right? And yeah, so I think that's about it. I don't know that there's anything else I wanted to talk about with this episode. I do want to dive into the process a little bit more of how I started to become a coach, and the learning curves that came along with that. And I think that next episode will be a branch of this, and what happened after, right? Because after this is when I really sat down and was like, yo, I think I can be a coach, and I want to be a coach. And I had some great people in my life, some awesome mentors early on that really showed me that, and gave me the opportunity to push boundaries and feel like I could do this. So I'm excited to talk about it. And if you guys ever have any questions, obviously reach out. Like I said, this is a very touchy subject, and I think a lot of people get scared about having that conversation because of being judged. I just want you to know that I've done it. I fucked up. I still fuck up now. I still eat cake, right? Like, I enjoy it, but I'm even in a process right now of getting down and losing weight, and it's tough again. When you have to go through that process, it's tough and it's hard, but like, it can be done, and I'm here to always help. So if you guys have any questions, like I said, reach out, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.